Good morning. Let's get straight into our word study today. And what I want to do is to draw your attention to a few verses that I think will help us to see why it's so important to understand what's going on in the book of Daniel and the fall of Babylon. In Daniel chapter 12, the angel of the Lord comes to Daniel because he's trying to figure out what's going on. And in verse 9, he replied, this is the angel replies to Daniel. Go your way, Daniel, because the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. It's interesting, he's saying, Daniel, this is not for your information. Those who are living in the last days needs to understand this. Verse 10 says, many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. Do you remember that Jesus said in Matthew 24, that in verse 14, that the gospel of this kingdom must be preached to all the world as a testimony to all nations, and that the end will then come. Right after that, in verse 15, he says that we need to understand the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel. And then he says this, let the reader understand. Right here we see that we are hinted towards the fact that the wise will take heed. Now in Revelation chapter 1, and remember the book of Revelation is a revealed book. In Revelation chapter 1, Jesus makes this very clear. He says in verse 3, blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take it to heart, what is written in it, because the time is near. The time that we need to know about is the time of the end. Right there in Revelation chapter 22, Jesus again makes this statement in verse 10. Then he told me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, because the time is near. So we constantly see that Jesus is drawing our attention to the fact that we need to study Daniel and we need to study Revelation, because the time is near, the end of time. Dear friends, what is the writing on the wall? What is going on? What can we expect? It's interesting, for the first time that the word Babylon is revealed in Revelation is in Revelation chapter 14. And it's found in a very interesting setting. There are three angels who are flying in the midst of heaven, crying out with a loud voice. Now, angels usually are given or indicators that these are messages. And these messages are loud messages. They are in the eternal gospel, as it says there, that is to be taken to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. And the first angel starts off by saying, the first message we need to understand in the end of time is that we are drawn to the understanding, as it says there in Revelation chapter 14, verse 7, fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Here, dear friends, we are drawn to the fact that the first part of this incredible gospel message is that we are to fear God and give him glory. Why? Because the hour of his judgment has come. The judgment of who? The judgment of Babylon. We will find this later on as we go on, but the world is being judged by God, regardless of how we feel about it. We are drawn to an understanding that we are to worship the God of creation, the God who made heavens and the earth. We are to have no other gods before him. Here in Daniel chapter 5, we've just come from the background where Nebuchadnezzar, a great king, was made an animal, and for 7 years ate grass. But out of the dust of that humiliation, out of the dust in the sense of his pride, he rises up in humility before God and acknowledges that God is supreme. He is great in the eyes of God because of his meekness. But here his grandson in chapter 5, Belshazzar, has not followed the footsteps of his grandfather, but has rather chosen to worship the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then, of course, of wood and stone. But you know what the sad part is? This is almost an act of defiance against the God of creation. It's saying that our kingdoms will rule the world. God's kingdom will never rule while I'm standing. And then all of a sudden, an uncanny, mysterious experience takes place. We read about this, how that in Daniel chapter 5, it says there, suddenly, this is in verse 5, the fingers of a human hand appear and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. It's amazing, something that cannot be described. Something is taking place. And dear friends, in the world we're living in, a lot of the things that are happening cannot be explained. Here it's almost as if the writing is on the wall. We can't explain it, but up against this wall is this mysterious writing. A hand, a bloodless hand. It's a haunting experience. This hand writes something. The reaction of Belshazzar is incredible. It says there in verse 6, his face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his knees knocked together and his legs gave way. I'm told in the book of Jeremiah that as the people see these things happening on planet Earth, the closing scenes of this world, they walk around with their hands on their stomach, almost as in labor, as a woman in labor. And it's strange. It's men experiencing the aspect of birth pains. And Jesus indicated in Matthew 24 that these are the signs, the birth pains are the signs that will appear just before we see the fall of Babylon. Dear friends, are you going to be scared? Or are you going to look up and say, this is our God, we have waited for him, he will save us? In my next study, I've entitled my next study, The Graffiti on the Wall. What is the writing on the wall, dear friends? Join me in our next study as we try and understand this. May God make you see the seriousness of the time that you're living in today. God bless you.